Okay, it's quite bold assumption to say that I balance it, but I guess I did try to manage it. It was no doubt it was a struggle because there was a lot of schoolwork from Ra and also research commitment was around like once a week. I had to call the professors to report findings. Mm, I guess it's also a lot about compartmentalizing because you have to like designate some point, like some interval in a day, you dedicate it to like schoolwork, and then others you dedicate it to like perhaps research, or maybe sometimes for research it's like you don't really like you can't really just sit down and an idea comes to you. It's more like a oh suddenly an intuition appears to you. So I guess like you can just think about it like all day and I mean I have a habit of having a small notebook for myself. So if I have some thoughts, some thoughts of my research, I'll just write it down. And that practically is like the so-called insights I need from my meeting with my professor. And I think that's probably how I'm able to balance it. The more rigorous part of the research actually comes in when the school holidays sort of like comes into there was a lot more time for the research. There was not a lot of schoolwork to do. Yeah. Well, like we started from an initial tree network, but I think it's possible to definitely apply it to other tree networks. Is like because most networks nowadays are expressed in a form like a topological form or something that's more higher dimensional. And my project was like 2D. So in order to like do that, I might have to like so-called like dimensionally reduce it to a form that is more palatable for my entire network and my entire code as a whole. And I think it's definitely possible. It's just that I might have to extend my code to include more kind of different varied types of roads, like roads that are not straight, roads that are like concave, convex, and also all kind of weird shapes. Because from my code, I generally assume that the roads are straight, which is what that's what the original street network gave me. I think it's actually possible to do it for other road networks as well. Okay. So essentially, like I have like this street network thing. It's like classified in terms of nodes and also purchases and some buildings, so you can kind of imagine what it's gonna be like. And then for the sort of like the intersection points where like the roads come together and converge, it's like not very visually appealing. So I've tried to make it more visually appealing by like making it like straight lines or 90 degree angles. And then also make sure that when I shift the nodes, I do not make them intersect with the buildings. So that's like a question statement. Yeah, and then like in order to do this, I have to like well, the basic framework of my project is that I identify like the nodes that have to be shifted based on an index I assign to them. And when the index crosses a certain threshold value, then I shift them to a point where I can calculate where it's most optimal for them. And when I shift to the point where it's most optimal for them, I also have to make sure that it doesn't like affect the general system, like the general like global tree network, like from a more local to a more global perspective. And if it does like affect it negatively, then I should carry out the operation. But if it doesn't, then I'll just go ahead with it. And I just iteratively repeat this process until it converges. And how does it converge? Basically, you can graph it or like something that you see the amount of iterations needed for it to like converge to a final point. And that will be when I would stop. Because right now I'm trying to do like a machine learning project, and it's definitely like when you step into an entirely new field of things, you have to be patient in terms of learning, especially for machine learning, because like if you say like visualize this, say you log on to Reddit or like Stack Exchange or something, you type in something like books for beginners in terms of machine learning, or like resources for beginners in terms of machine learning, and a lot of stuff comes up for you. and also a lot of resources like Coursera and books and also web pages and courses and all of those is so accessible. It's so ubiquitous. You don't know where to start. So like I feel that is also a huge problem for most people nowadays, like trying to learn new stuff about coding and also um, machine learning and whatnot, because there isn't just like a good place to start because there's simply so many options. And so what matters to yourself more is trying to find a learning path and a learning method that suits you, especially in terms of something that's entirely new and something that is so rapidly developing and so much literature done in terms of this. And essentially, I feel that you also need a lot of patience to learn all of these, because if you don't have the patience, you also can't learn. Like you'll be easily agitated, and then you expect that, oh, maybe I can learn this very quickly, but turns out you didn't really understand anything that was taught. And so that's why I feel that you also need a lot of patience in terms of learning new stuff. You need to be humble, you need to be you need humble, you need humility. And in terms of breaking down complex questions, I guess I guess in your day-to-day life, like probably for me solving Olympic problems, you also need to decompose the problem into smaller subsets of problems that you can tackle slowly bit by bit. Okay, so for my first one is like a math project with an US professor. It's about a rather abstract like circular packing, like a geometric circular packing. And I think for that one, it was a very like quite an arcane topic. Like it was not really what you will be in contact with for most of your learning of math. So for that, of course, the struggle comes in when I was trying to like familiarize myself with the geometric construction and also think about like what are some of the patterns that govern it. But it's also quite hard because it requires a lot of like more um, inaccessible visualizations such as like inversion and projective geometry, which I was not familiar with. And to understand it, you need a lot of like intuition. And those do not come to you very regularly because you're usually familiar with like Euclidean geometry. You don't really like, oh, look at projective geometry. That was like the main hard part for my first project. For my second project, um, definitely learning coding. Like, I mean, I did know how to code a little bit in Python, but that was a little bit, yeah. And the struggle comes in when I was trying to like code an entire classes, functions, and like general things that applied to my project. And at first it was hard. There was a lot of like there was a very steep learning curve. But afterwards, I think I also think that learning coding is like once you get something more fundamental, you're able to extrapolate it to other more advanced stuff, which will accelerate your process a lot faster and also allows your learning to be a lot smoother. And for something like both of my projects, it was hard to like because math and like this kind of both of my projects are classified as math, but I think math projects are a bit hard to like come up with like actual findings that are like so-called applicable. Because unlike for like science projects, you can do experiments and then you can like draw conclusions based off your experiments. Those are quite obvious. But for math, it's like you have to come up with a more novel theorem and you have to prove a theorem. Usually that's the case that works. And that itself is quite hard because like all of like the old school math and like the more like let's say yeah, it's already pretty much established, so it's quite hard to come up with stuff. Yeah. Patience. Like in terms of virtue, it's definitely patience. Yeah. Because research is honestly like all people said, most people have said about research. It's an arduous process and definitely even for math projects, which are um not as unpredictable as other projects. I mean, for the nature of my projects, because it was more about like, okay, there was one running simulations, there was more one like deducing theorems. So I guess it's quite different, but both requires patience because uh you don't know, like you also don't know when the intuition's gonna come to you, and you don't know when you're gonna make the breakthrough. And I guess other skill sets you can pick up for research is definitely, oh, why am I so cliche? Yeah, but critical thinking and also breaking down complex problems into more simpler models and also more simpler frameworks so that you can target the problem like bit by bit. Like that was especially what I did for my road network project. When I try to explain the framework to other people, it's also generally like how I try to decompose the problem myself. I think generally I would like encourage them to keep like a repository of something that they are interested in, or like perhaps like uh whenever they see something interesting, they can just like jot it down, or they see something that they do not quite understand a problem that they are interested about, they should definitely explore and within their free time, and then so that they can eventually conduct their own research in terms of the topic they're interested in. So in terms of research, I feel that it's more like, I mean, I can't speak for my own because most of my projects are not like, the topics are not chosen by me, but like, yeah, it's kind of like determined by my professors. But I definitely try to keep some of like these explore projects on like, the sideline to like read up more and also try to understand more. So I feel that what matters most is that you know what you're interested in and you actively explore what you're interested in your free time so that you can eventually extend it to research and also keep like the intellectual curiosity up. In terms of concrete advice, it will definitely be like read a lot of papers in what you're interested in, try to watch more videos so that you can understand the concept in a more visual manner. Yeah.